I want to welcome you all to Financial Trauma and Transformation, a table talk presented by Reimagine. Our guests are Rosa Colleen, Nafasi Farrell, and Stella Gold. My name is Andrew Engel. I'm senior programmer at Reimagine. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a white cisgender male. I've got a differently patterned flannel shirt on. I've got glasses. Behind me is a bright orange wall. Our discussion tonight is the second program in a three-part series that examines grief, growth, and money, how to transform from financial troubles and traumas and make them into new pathways for change. Last week, we met with another trio of financial experts who helped us find entry points for taboo topics with our loved ones. I learned last week that home-cooked meals can always help with a difficult conversation about money. Another takeaway, illness and death are always hard, but with some planning, emergency situations can feel more controlled. Another takeaway, most parents have the expectation that you will be caring for them, that you will be taking care of their finances, and often that's not communicated. So it's really important to have that conversation and meet those expectations if you can. And a fourth takeaway, make sure that human connections override any financial calculations. And I encourage you to take a look at this table talk, and you'll be able to take a look at this one too, because we're recording it and we'll be sending it out to you after this event in a few days. And you can take a look at all of our events that are recorded in our library, and I'll put a link in the chat about that. Next week, which is the third program in our series on grief, growth, and money, we have the team from Puzzlekind and Jolene Godfrey helping us with puzzling questions about money and family, and you all get to piece together a digital jigsaw puzzle. It's going to be a lot of fun. As some of you may know, we at Reimagine have been leaning into the process and philosophy of what's known as post-traumatic growth, or PTG. It's evidence-based psychological research that allows us to recognize opportunity and experience change when struggling with grief, loss, or trauma. As a result of adversities that we face, it's possible to increase personal strength and optimism. It's possible to create more meaningful relationships. It's possible to have a deeper appreciation of life and to discover spirituality and purpose. Tonight's program is also a table talk, which is a Reimagine series created by and for underrepresented communities. Now, the overarching question of a table talk is, what does it mean to live and die well, specifically among groups that have been historically marginalized, who experience obstacles to healthcare and death care? Our vision for Table Talk is that it becomes a regular booster shot of knowledge, empathy, cultural humility, and community. While these conversations are by and for underrepresented communities, everyone is invited to these spaces to witness, listen, and learn. Again, you can view all recordings of our table talks on our website. I'll paste a link in the chat. You'll get it in the follow-up email. Rosa, Nafasi, and Stella will be in conversation for about 40 minutes. And then we'll follow with 15 to 20 minutes of Q&A from all of you. For those who wish, you can click on the CC icon at the bottom of your screen to get a live transcript of what's being said. And feel free to send me a note in the chat privately if you're having any technical issues. I might be able to help you. Okay. The majority of us are zooming in from the United States, also known as Turtle Island by Native Americans and their allies. I am in Lenapehoking. That's where a large metropolis called New York is located on occupied land. I ask you all to join me in acknowledging Indigenous communities in North America, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. I am stating this because it's a small step to continue the process of dismantling the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism and white supremacy. And we're interested in knowing where all of you are. I will paste a link in the chat later if someone else hasn't beaten me to it, but there's a wonderful website, Native Land. It's native-land.ca. And it's a place to locate Indigenous territories. So I encourage you to check that out. And use the chat to post your questions. We will be keeping track of them. And during Q&A, we'd also be happy for you all to ask questions posted in the chat. You'll be invited to unmute if you like at the end and ask your question directly. Okay. And now I'm going to let our guest speakers introduce themselves. I'll be pasting information about them in the chat. And you can also see their full bios in the event listing. So I want to offer a warm welcome to Rosa, Stella, and Afasi.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much, Reimagine, for this opportunity. I'm so incredibly grateful to have this conversation with Stella and Afasi and to be in community with all of you. And for those who don't know me, my name is Rosa. I am a full-time bilingual therapist, and I'm also the founder of Mujeres Building Abundance, which is a coaching and educational platform for women of color to really rewrite their narratives around money and to feel empowered and in control of their financial journey. And so just a little bit about myself. I grew up in the projects in a single parent household. My mother was a survivor of domestic violence, and she provided for me, my two older brothers, and my uncle with an income of less than $18,000. Until this day, I'm like, Mommy, how did you make it? Because I just can't even fathom someone with that income to provide for all of us. And so growing up, I cursed that money. I felt defeated. I felt hopeless. I was so angry at money because I did not have the opportunities that I felt at the time as a kid I wish I had. I didn't grow up with any family outings, with any travels with my family. I was bullied in school for shoes. And so I knew growing up we were struggling. The conversation around money was never there. And it wasn't until in my late 20s that I decided I need to take control of my financial journey. And I need to start getting rid of some of my debt. And I started my journey with reading personal finance books and taking a personal finance class. And one of the first books that I read was Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And one of the biggest takeaways from that book was invest in yourself. And I did that. I attended several different conferences. And in 2020, during the pandemic, one of the words that I decided that will define my year was abundance. And if you haven't done this before, I super encourage you to think about what word is going to define the rest of your year. In that year, I started seeing abundance everywhere. And my friend introduced me to the 21-day abundance meditation. And that completely transformed my relationship with money. I started seeing money as my friend. I started seeing money as energy. I started having a healthy relationship with money because I felt that I deserved money and that abundance is my birthright and that I expect and accept abundance to flow easily to me. And so it was through that experience, and I strongly believe that because money is energy, whatever messages we share or tell ourselves will impact us physically, emotionally, and spiritually, or it can empower us. And I can't sit here and tell you that I don't have those moments where I feel defeated and I have to check myself and go back to my affirmations and go back to welcome money into my life, and knowing that money is my friend and money has my back, right? And so this conversation is important around our relationship with money, and it's super important to also have a conversation of grief and how do you prepare when it comes to death and the planning of it all, because it can also take a huge emotional toll. So thank you again so much. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with all of you, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Stella.
Hello. Wow, I just felt all of that and received all of that, Rosa, and I just resonated with so much, as I'm sure a lot of people here do too. So I am Stella. I am the founder and CEO of My Gold Standard. And I want to bring y'all back with me to 2015. And that year is the year, specifically November 2015, where my entire life changed. My father unexpectedly passed away, and I was 24 years old, very young. And that experience shook me, not only because I just lost my favorite person in my life, but also it was the first time that I was met with so many questions around money and lots of forms and a lot of tax talk, and also a lot of not wanting to talk about money and planning a funeral, and within my family, just because money is so taboo and still is taboo in this culture. But as Andy mentioned earlier, a lot of that was put on me, the responsibility to take care of that, because one, I'm the eldest, and two, I'm first gen. My mother is an immigrant from the Philippines, and she expected that she came to this country that's super great, and they taught me everything and anything about money and taxes and adulting, only to find and discover that I knew just as much as she did, which was not very much. And so we were both hit with that, harsh reality of, wow, we need to figure this out. Specifically, I needed to figure it out because my mother was very afraid and nervous and anxious. And I was a little bit more grounded and was ready to step up to the plate and take on that responsibility. And through that experience, I talked to a lot of people, and a lot of those people that I met with, financial advisors, CPAs, were these, white cis men in gray suits, and the offices were always really, really cold. And it just really spiritually and emotionally bypassed my experience that I was having around money. And that's when I realized that we really lack this trauma-informed, humanized, and intersectional approach when it comes to the financial literacy industry. But really also just in who talks about money and who's in the space and who's at the table, and just being here with you, Rosa, and Nafasi, I feel really, really just, this is why I'm here, So fast forward 7 years later, making a whole company out of my grief and out of my anger and all the discoveries, and also a lot of deconditioning from the financial system that we live in. that's what brought me here today. And I'm just really honored to share this space with y'all and everyone here. I'm just looking at the community, and this is what I live for. So yeah, thank you for being in this space and community with us. And now I'm going to pass it to Nafasi.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Della Rosa. It is so wonderful to have known you all for this long and to get to share space with you all in this larger setting. It's truly an honor. So good evening, everyone. My name is Nafasi Farrell. I use she, her pronouns. I am here located on the Duwamish lands here in Washington State. I consider myself to be a wife and a daughter. I'm also a wonderful cook. I'm writing a cookbook this year. It's a part of my healing practice this year and practice of joy. I'm the founder of Narratives Unbound LLC. It's an education and consulting company that's dedicated to advancing racial and economic equity through specifically financial coaching, community workshops, and wealth redistribution circles that both of these two beautiful people are a part of. And mine, just as the journey of many of us, and including Stella's, my awakening to money was one of deep trauma and grief. I built my company after the passing of my father in 2018. In 2019, I really began to say, oh, these are all the things that I went through to help him pass on. These are all the things that no one told me growing up, right? I grew up in a community of matriarchs, right? Where all the women just worked really hard to get it done. And no one talked about pretty much anything. Financial enabling was one of what was the main tool, right? Keep the family strong, keep the family together, no matter what, no matter what expense. And it wasn't until my father's passing and really going on the journey of getting my husband and I over $30,000 worth of debt that I really realized, like, we can talk about race all day, but we're not talking about economics. So we're missing a main piece of the puzzle for us to be well and for us to be, grow into the next generation. And so really understanding money for me, getting out of debt, learning how to save, invest, and redistribute, which I teach in my practice now, has been a journey of grieving parts of myself that I didn't get to know, parts of myself that I miss dearly from the passing of our loved ones, right? I loved my father deeply, even reflecting and seeing all of his trauma and how that impacted my siblings. Having to be the one in charge, right? Responsibility always usually falls on the head of one instead of many. And I felt that deeply. And having to journey through different ways of coping to finish the process, to really help someone laid to rest from beginning to end took 2 years. So it's beautiful and it's hard, right? But we must do it together. And so that's really been this journey of how Narratives Unbound came to be, and really why I do this work that I do every day, and trying to help people learn how to save whatever little we can, learning to invest, right? Investing not in ourselves, but money is, right? So as Rosa was saying, money is energy. Money is our skill, our resources. Currency is one form of money that we have, right? We created money. And so we must learn, right, to use it well through the things that we face in our lives. So now we have a lot of things that we want to discuss with each other and want to share in space with you all today. And so as we move into our discussion this evening, I do want to be mindful that, we're going to be talking about trauma, right? We've already really opened that space and opened up that space of vulnerability. I appreciate you, Rosa, for diving in with that level of vulnerability in the space. And so that our bodies might feel activated, right? We might feel some discomfort as we engage in this conversation, us, as in this discussion, and those of you that are with us on screen. So please, we would all, both three of us would like to say to please prioritize your well-being, right? Of your body, your mind, and your spirit, right? And there's other resources of therapy and mental health resources that we have in this community and beyond, right? That's a part of our toolkit. So if you do need that level of support, please reach out, either to us or to Andy or to others, if something does trigger you throughout this conversation. So when we think about trauma, right, we have an overarching definition of what we call trauma, right? It's an event or some sort of circumstance that results in, right, an emotional or a physical or some sort of life-threatening. If it's an avalanche or if it's some sort of natural disaster that we're dealing with, that has, right, lasting effects on our mental, physical, and emotional well-being, and our social and our spiritual well-being. But as all three of us are Trauma of Money graduates, I have the honor of teaching within the Trauma of Money program, that trauma impacts us in our relationship with our resources in many ways, right? Not just money, but this conversation is about money, so we can focus definitely on that. But that it impacts us generationally, right? And it impacts us as a society, and it impacts us as we relate with one another individually. And it's very complex. Very, very, very complex. So I would love for us to begin our discussion, for me to hear from each of us about how we define trauma, right, through our own lens, and how throughout our healing journey, how have we continued to develop, right, healthy relationships with money at different points and times on our journey? What has given us that strength to keep going forward? For me, I started my company in 2019, but I began the journey in 2016. So it's been some years. So to traverse the years of growth, what has sustained you? So let's start there.
For me, I think Stella, were you?
No. I just unmuted in general. Sorry.
No worries. I think similar to the trauma definition, I think for me it's something that literally, I mean, it can be so debilitating. And I see it right now with my brother. But it's something that literally takes a toll on you physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and navigating with. As a kid, I was angry a lot because I was separated from my parents when I was 6 years old and entered the foster care system for several months until my mother was able to take care of us. But after that, my father wasn't around. And so seeing her struggle and being a survivor of domestic violence, and me being angry at mom because she couldn't provide the things that I wanted her to provide me. And we live in such a capitalist and consumer society, and we're constantly comparing ourselves to other people. And I did that a lot growing up as a kid, like so and so has these shoes, so and so has these things, and I don't have that. So it's like growing up just defeated and angry so much at money, until sharing my story about starting my own journey and letting you know that yes, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of guilt, and it's like, how do we become more compassionate to ourselves, and how do we give ourselves a lot of grace and kindness around the financial mistakes that we made in the past. And here we are now, and knowing that we're not alone in this journey. There's a community of all of us here right now, and each of us has a story. And it's like, how can we come together as a community to share some of these stories together? And so for me, what's been helpful in my journey is my affirmations. It's being a community with other folks that are also in their journey. And it's really believing that I do deserve this money, that it's constantly going to come to me easily. That's been super helpful for me. And just that feeling of like, I'm not alone. There's people with me, and there's community with me. So thank you again for that question.
Yeah, I can dive in from my perspective of trauma. It's like, where do you even begin? I want to also do like another time loop and jump back a bit to the ancestors, my ancestors, and I'll come full circle in a second. But trauma to me, I feel like the textbook definition of trauma kind of doesn't invite nuance and the complexities that trauma can show up in our lives, in our bodies, in our relationships. And for me, it really showed up in my body. I have complex PTSD, and it just like, resonating with you, Rosa, it's debilitating. It is so debilitating that every behavior that you do, or even experience that you find yourself in, it's just a tornado of confusion and shame. And also, I think what makes trauma so intense is that it's something that that keeps happening even when you're not in it, right? Like it's a repetitive state of being back in that moment, or many moments, in a lot of our cases. And so, I want to shed light on that, just because I feel like, trauma and pain, like I've had a lot of painful experiences, but it didn't really lodge itself in my body the way that trauma has, right? And the way that it developed in my life. And now I do feel like I have leaned and entered more into a post-traumatic growth stage of my life, because, I'm not just in this survival mode, and I would say money included in that. I'm not just getting my, basic needs met, but also my, like, outside of just food and shelter and being, well fed, hydrated, but actually thriving, actually reclaiming so much that I feel like my ancestors pass along that message to me. And so growing up, the message that I got from my mom, who, was living in poverty in the Philippines, was always, we never had enough. There was always sacrifice, food scarcity, a lot of financial trauma. Poverty is financial trauma. And with that knowledge, I just thought, okay, like that's just like what life was like for, my people, my ancestors, and what even my own mother didn't know. And while I was going on this journey of ancestral healing, because I knew that I had to get to the root of the trauma that was within my body. It wasn't just mine, it was generations inside of me. I was to discover that actually my family was quite abundant in the Philippines, and even going back to the indigenous time, pre-colonial Philippines, abundance was all around. And my Lola was a financial planner. She was like the budgeter of the family, and they did live having not only their needs met, but their desires too. And that's when I shifted that narrative, that identity of, my people, my family, my ancestors just being, colonized and oppressed, to, well, there's also ancestral wisdom. There's not just ancestral trauma. And inviting more space for that really shifted. That was a big shift for me. And practicing radical self-compassion and acceptance, to meeting myself where I was at too. Yeah.
Beautiful. We are, like I like to say, when we speak about our ancestors, we are living ancestors as we are passing through life. We look back at the ancestors that are behind us, and we look forward 7 generations and ancestors that will come. And that, in my journey of healing through trauma, I feel like since I was young, I understood that we as people went through really bad things. And growing up in a family of extreme hoarding, there is enough, but you have to have resource abundance to know that there is enough once scarcity has gone. And growing up in a household with many that could not use their resource together for their family, was, as I got older, was extremely traumatic. To see the wealth lost, to know that as a species, right, our trajectory is that by every third generation, wealth is lost. And seeing as the youngest of my generation, seeing that actually play out in my family, and see that in ways where there's enough money, but there's rats in the house, right? Thinking that those things were normal growing up. Oh, everyone has this, everyone lives like this in this way. And that really shaped my way of how I used resource, right? Where there is enough, but you must hang on to what you have because you don't know who might need it, right? And really becoming that financial enabler of who can I help, who can I serve, who can I save, because I can't save my family. From the things that they've gone through, from the rape, from the abuse, from the generations of that and what that's caused, aside from there being enough, right? And seeing really the mental health, the deep level of mental health and stability that when my family members were growing up, trauma wasn't a discussion, and therapy wasn't a thing that Black people did. And even though it's no longer taboo in my family, I see the reverberations of that within my brothers and their process, within my mother and my aunt, as I help them move into this next stage of in life. My family members are over 75 years old, and are just beginning to have some hard conversations. And there's some grief and trauma in having to lead the way, right? Even with knowledge and tools, there's always, you have to make the trek up the mountain. But I think in this work, and I think that we know that we build community to do that. The one thing I share with others is about building your pod, right? In your pod, you should have your financial support, your mental support. You should have your fun support, right? What are the areas of your life that are seeding? And that's one of the things that's helped me continue to grow my relationship with healthy relationship with money, is what are the resources that I do have to use and take action within the world. And for me, that was what I call the abundance plan, which is the budget. The budget's a scary word that everybody wants to run away from. So the abundance plan, right? Writing down my dreams so that those dreams can manifest and become reality. And that 6 years of work became that, that my husband and I are at the point where I can continue to build the business that I built, and that's what I get to focus on. And that was a dream 5 years ago. So the power of our experiences to move us forward, that has moved me forward, has been immense. And I'm grateful for the challenges of the lessons, and knowing that we can build these tools together, really helping each other understand what it means to live right. And, we're talking about dying well. The process to that is one that is hard, and it creates, right, as you talked about our ancestors, we supposedly hold 14 memories of our ancestors within our bodies, within our DNA, right? That comes out at different points in time, right? Who's holding us? How are we holding ourselves, right? Meditation, walking, those are the things that have grounded me. And it's different tools at different times. Some things have served me in the beginning. Some things no longer serve me on this journey of healing. Maybe they will in the future. And so really me having a flexible toolkit has really, really been grounding, and knowing that there's abundance, right? There's abundance of not just money, but of the other resources that I need to take care of myself, my family, and my friends around me. And that's really been my process to building a healthy relationship with money. Yeah.
I'd love to respond to what you just shared, Nafasi, and talking about the tools, our little toolkit, our community, our pod. I really feel like nobody talks about the work and how hard it is, and that it's okay for it to be hard, because I think that a lot of times I felt so much shame, why do I keep doing this? Or why am I like this? Why do I feel this way? Can't I just move on and get over it? Or why does the work have to be so hard? And it is, but it's worth it, right? So it's the work was for me, going to therapy 3 times a week, because I needed more than one a week, and not feeling shame of that, the money aspect of that, I was spending, because I didn't have health insurance that would cover that at the time, or still don't actually. But I did have the means to be able to handle that investment in myself. And I remember feeling so much shame, like, ugh, why can't I be normal? Why do I have to have all these problems? Like, why do I have to create a budget line item that just shows me every freaking week how much I spend on my mental illness? And there's so much power in leaning on people. There's so much power in acknowledging that that's what you need right now. And also so much power in being like, wow, I can invest in intense therapy 3 times a week. That is going to suck in the beginning, but I will build emotional resiliency. And I think another thing that I want to bring up is there's a lot of talk about abundance, and I just want to hold some space for what to do when there's restriction, because that happens. And I think that actually someone in the chat said something that really is what got this talk in my mind going. Elle Bennett said, I've heard trauma defined as a time when there's no perceived way out, and talking about being in a moment of let's talk finances, a financial moment of it's restrictive, or you're in this moment of I'm living paycheck to paycheck, or I am barely making ends meet, or I'm underwater, and there's that restriction there. Understanding that this is how it is now, easier said than done, but there's impermanence in everything. And I know that's so hard to my core because of experiencing the passing of my father. That was traumatic, but there was also so much growth and beauty there, knowing that everything in life is impermanent. Abundance can also be impermanent in a tangible way, right? A restriction also can be impermanent, and allowing that, and acknowledging that there is always a way out, or a way in, or a way around, right?
Thank you both, Stella and Afasi, for sharing these gems. And Stella, I was ready to take out a tissue because I am ready to cry right now. Oh my God. The part that you said about, and again, we carry so much trauma in our bodies. So it's like, how can we practice healing practices for our bodies and to take care of our bodies? Because when you mention about, I'm spending so much money every single week on my health, on my mental health, that's exactly how I feel about my physical health. I've been dealing with chronic pain since 2016. I've spent thousands of money already on so many different parts of my body. And even now I'm experiencing a lot of pain in so many different parts of my body that I'm feeling so much shame and guilt around. Oh my goodness, how did I get here? And I'm spending all of this money. And it's also an investment for my well-being, because if I don't invest in my health right now, I can't imagine what my body's going to be feeling like in 5 years, in 10 years. And health is wealth. Health is really wealth. And so if you're not healthy, if you are just in a state of just, feeling debilitated, not being able to do anything, you're not going to be able to enjoy life to the fullest. It's important for us to prioritize our healing, and the way you heal it's up to you. There's so many different ways of healing. I've recently discovered that for me, when it comes to alternative ways of healing, I love readings. I love tarot readings. I love connecting with my ancestors. I love to know that every time I do a reading, Bobby shows up and he shares messages with me, and he is considered one of my spirit guides. And so I love that. That's my healing, right? And it's also important for me to continue to practice other things that I can do for my body. But wow, Stella, you just, it was a lot that you shared, and it's a lot for me to reflect on as well. And just again, it's an investment for ourselves, and wanting to like put the shame and guilt aside, be curious about it, sit with it. And it's like, okay, this is what I can do now to show up for my body. This is the only body that I have, right? And so I need to make sure I take care of this body. And a lot of it is my mental work, my emotional work, my physical work, right? It takes a lot of discipline, it takes a lot of time, and you're not alone. There's a lot of us that can probably resonate with your story, especially pain is universal. A lot of us experience pain. Some of us experience more pain than others, and that's okay.
I feel that so much, Stella, so much, Rosa, that I think as women of color, wellness was stolen, right? We were slaves. So wellness was stolen. Life, energy to heal. And it's always the last thing that we typically invest in, right? It's later in our journey. It's later on, oh, I need to take care of my family first before me. And I was at a meeting one day in the school district, and a leader got up and started reading the names of all the Black dead women that saved everyone before themselves. And I said, there's got to be a better way. And there is. I'm here because my ancestors are testimony that I'm breathing right now, because they took that risk to make a change for me to be here in this moment. And that in that budget, in building our abundance plans, that we are first. Like we talk about with money paying ourselves first, where we typically always say, well, that means our retirement. My 401k, am I about that right? Did I do that? But the first box we actually should be checking is me, is us, is the vessel. Am I taking care of this vessel? What am I investing into it? Time, money, energy. The one thing I've declared for this year for myself has been more physical healing, means physical touch of healing, massages, spas, things that give sense to my fascia, into my bones, into my body, to feel into that, because that is what I know in this next, I feel like when it comes to trauma too, there's layers of the next phases and what the body and the mind and the spirit might need. And so in this season, I'm really needing that nourishment of my physical self, to tend to that, right, Rosa, what you're speaking about, to pain in the body, to the vessel that holds us, because if the vessel's gone, we're not here. And it is in those, right, we diminish shame with each step we take forward, right? Just writing down our expenses, right? Just writing down our debts, just writing and organizing our dreams, right? What does it look like for me to build a budget or build an abundance plan for what I want my life to look like in 10 years, right? It's not here yet, but I can manifest it, right? Whether that's a certain amount of money that you want to make, or a certain lifestyle that you want to accommodate, and then the money that, right, will accommodate that lifestyle, right? Dreaming towards and dreaming into that. But dreaming into wellness and healing is so important. And I'm happy that I feel like the spirit energy has called that into so much space very loudly. Like the spirit is talking loudly. No longer is it the small, quiet, heal yourself. It's heal yourself. And here's your community of beautiful other humans to journey with on that. And I feel that deeply, like in the physical, and I feel that so deeply in the spiritual. Definitely. Any thoughts, Stella Rosa, on this?
I'm going to quote my partner, because we talk about this a lot, and there's like two things. I'm going to quote my partner first, and then there's a follow-up that I want to share. But we were talking about why it's so hard for people to invest in themselves. like you were just sharing, like you are the vessel. Like, yes. Like, why was it so hard for me to invest in my mental health? I did have the means, right? It's not like I didn't. And I feel very privileged to say that and acknowledge that too. You know, I had the means. Like I feel incredibly grateful, you know, for that. But I meet a lot of people that do have the means to invest in themselves as well, but they don't. And not, you know, I'm not saying forever, but they just, in that moment of them sharing with me, it's like, well, why not? And it's really because I'm going to say this as a cultural thing, especially that I see this in women and QT BIPOC. But my partner shared with me, people think that taking care of themselves is a luxury. And that hit hard for me because I felt that is what I was treating my health and my body and my mental and spiritual health. You know, we're talking about health, not just in like physical, like it's all connected. So I want to make that very clear that in the context that we're talking about health, it's beyond our physical being. It's mental and spiritual, emotional health. And why was I looking at that as a luxury instead of like a necessity that I need to go from survival mode to thriving? And I think a lot of the time too is that culturally, I feel that there's a narrative that, you know, we're just being bombarded with what feels good. What feels good doesn't mean that it's actually good for us. That's number one. You know, I've had my journey with substance abuse and, you know, all forms of self-soothing, self-medicating. And I remember thinking back of like, I just couldn't hold it. I couldn't tolerate what was happening in my mind, heart, soul, and body, because I didn't know how to metabolize it. I didn't know how to transform it. And now knowing how to do that, things that used to really get to me, like, it's amazing. Like it just doesn't lodge itself in my mind and body anymore. I experience the pain and I'm like, yo, I got this. This is impermanent. This is temporary, and let it feel bad. And then let it feel good. Naturally, organically, let the spirit take care of that. We talk so much about that in Afasi, and I love that you like it'll work out, you know. And this isn't like toxic positivity, it's more of like it's optimism, it's resiliency, we're not bypassing our experiences, we're not bypassing our past, we're not bypassing our ancestors. We are holding everything together to coexist simultaneously with one another. Because yeah, I'm not about binaries, if you can't tell. I'm not about this or that.
I definitely appreciated the temporary part, because that's something I keep telling myself. I keep telling myself this too shall pass. Your pain is temporary. You're not always going to be this way. And so now, you know, I'm at a point in my life where I'm tired of, you know, not doing things that I would like to do because of my pain. I keep excusing, oh, I can't go to so-and-so because I'm dealing with pain, or my back really hurts, or my feet really hurts. And I'm tired of not being able to live life truly, authentically. This year, that is my intention, to really live life despite the pain that I'm in. And so, you know, it's challenging yourself to ask yourself, what does your body love to do? What gets her really excited? So for me, I'm a big foodie. I love food. And so, and I love dark chocolate. So I make sure to buy dark chocolate for my body every single weekend, or I get to treat her to brunch, or I get to treat her to ice cream and matcha lattes because she loves matcha lattes. So it's like, what are some of the things that I know my body gets really excited about? And let me keep doing those. Let me keep connecting with my body, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through Reiki sessions, whether it's through readings. I mean, however, whatever, my body is called to, I want to make sure that I'm taking care of her because she's been in pain for so long. And I also need to tell myself I'm tired of not living life because of my pain. So challenge yourself to think about, observe your body and the way your body moves to certain situations or to certain things, and journal about it or write things down, to make sure that you're constantly paying attention to your body and what it needs and what it desires and what it deserves too.
Mm.
Oh, I think
There-
you're
Now I'm gonna read it. Slowing down is what I was saying, the slowing down, the pausing. Is so necessary for these phases of transformation and change. I know we have some time. Stella Rosa, I want to jump into some questions. Would you like all to jump into some questions? I believe that Ash has a question.
Yeah. Yeah, are we ready? Is Andy here?
I'm
Where's
here.
some questions? Hi.
So I'm back. Yeah, I thought Ash did pose a question in the chat, but Ash, if you'd like to unmute and ask directly, you are welcome to do that. And if not, I can ask that question.
Hello, hi. I'm Ash. I use they, them pronouns. I guess my question is kind of like, what small actionable steps that you've taken that have worked to sort of build confidence or encourage yourself while trying to build abundance? Because I also like have this background of like my family trying to be like, look and aspire to middle class while like we were on and off of like food stamps. So scarcity was just like that idea of like scarcity of resources has always been around. And I have been on disability for over a year, and it's drastically changed my like financial state, where I had like gotten myself out of debt and had a savings with this new job I had, to now I'm back in debt without a savings. And it's just really discouraging, especially because I have got chronic pain and chronic illness. So a lot of what you were saying, like all of you were saying around like taking care of yourself and like spiritually and physically, that's a lot of stuff that I've been really focusing on in this last year. And in doing so, that it cost a lot. So I don't know if there's like anything in addition to what you said. I think after I wrote the question, you went in on more like some things that have like kind of answered that question for me.
Stella, were you gonna say something? You're unmuted.
I'm just reflecting, but yeah.
Um,
Thank you for sharing that, Ash, first and foremost. And I just want to like acknowledge it's not always easy to share, as I'm here sharing my own stuff too. So I just want to say thank you. Yeah, and yeah, at least acknowledge that. And then I'm going to reflect a little bit more how I want to respond. But I think, Nafasi, do you have something to share?
I say I just from my personal experience of being in and out of wealth building, that that journey is a hard roller coaster journey. It's like this. That has been my journey. I've been in debt, we've been out of debt. I've been in debt and it's out of debt. And it's the process of learning a system that works well for you to traverse that journey. knowing that, yes, this too shall pass, but it will pass in different ways at different points in time in your life. But as long as you have your toolkit of different resources, you can get through. One of the things that I work on within my work is wealth redistribution. So within that pod, having someone in your community that can help you financially when you cannot, right? That is so important to building community systems of stability, right? We are multicellular organisms that need each other. We cannot build without each other. We are not individuals. We all don't farm and create our own food and do all the things. We need each other. So it's very important that we use our power as humans to build community. Community meaning who in your sphere, whether you're family or non-family, friends are family, right? So who in your circle, who can you call on for $100, $500, $1,000? And if you do not have that, fostering that energy within your life. This is a point missing within my life, within my network. What do I need to bring that into my network? And knowing that I've had instances within my community that's been very hard to find. Some people do not have others. Some people are alone, but it's in that connection, right? In some cases, I was able to help get that person help from different people. So usually, yes, if there's a will, there's a way, but also knowing that it's hard and that in community, there's solution. I know that there's this reimagined community. There's, my community, there's Stella's community, there's Rosa's community. As long as you're connected to someone, there's other people that can support you through that connection. And that's what sustained me through those roller coasters, knowing that I do have community. And right now I am not in abundance, but I know that I'm traversing through this part of my life to another layer of abundance that I didn't experience before. So that's just what I want to share from my personal experience. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I can add a little bit too. I was able to read, sorry, sometimes I need the words, that really helps. And acknowledge that being where you're currently at, right, in this moment, even though it's impermanent, as you know, because you've been in a position where you were able to work and build up savings and see that light at the end of the tunnel and meeting some of your financial goals. But I really want to just say straight up that, like, being in debt, there's no shame in being in debt, number one. Although I know it can feel so, like, without having savings, you can feel financially vulnerable, and in some ways, and in a lot of ways, you are in this moment. But I really do see debt as neutral, or at least I try to. It's not easy, but I just see it as neutral, as something that, okay, we're in debt right now. I don't like it. I'm allowed to not like it, but let's zoom out and, let's figure out what works for me instead of trying to work within the system that isn't really set up for disabled folks to succeed or even just like live well. And so the way that I did it, I, worked at a really horrendous startup and worked 80 hours, 60 hours a week, while also not knowing that I was experiencing CPTSD. I was ill, like very mentally and physically ill, and I would have to take a lot of days off, sometimes even weeks. I'd be completely debilitated because I just couldn't show up as a full 100% human being. I couldn't be in society. And, now realizing how that just like did not work, and honestly was like pouring gasoline on these, mental and physical limitations that I had. I really thought, I was very thoughtful on how I wanted to make being in this business, my business, serve my needs. Like, I don't work like that anymore. And if I need a mental health day or a physical health day, if I'm sick, I really, really think thoughtfully on how I can make my environment serve the limitations I have. And I say limitations with pride. Right. So I don't know if that resonates, but that's what I wanted to share.
Yeah, thank you. Honestly, that helps a lot. I think it's really hard for me to get out from under that shame, even though like my logical brain is telling me that that is like the patriarchy, capitalism, racism, like that whole conglomeration that's telling me it's shameful to like be in debt, when instead I can like look back on my lineage and see like how it happened through those things. Yeah, I think what you both said was really helpful. Thank you.
I want to jump in and say that there are a couple of questions that popped up, and I'll let the three of you decide what you want to take at this point. There was a question from Celeste. Can you say a little bit about the relationship between trauma, time, and money? There's a question from Sarah about ways financial trauma comes up in our bodies. And then a question from Meg about asking for help.
Asking for help. I have a quick comment on that that I want to share with, because Stella's here and has been a part of the wealth redistribution practice and can really speak to just the reality that receiving is a practice. You must practice receiving as much as you give. That's the only medicine. The medicine is actually to complete the cycle. It's a full cycle. Giving and receiving is a full cycle. So receive as much as you give. And then when your ancestors do bring something for you to receive, note that this is from my ancestors. I needed this right now. This was supposed to come to me. Now I can use that to flow through me in other ways. That receiving as a gift really helps deplete and destroy shame, right? Because things that flow to you are meant to come to you. They're there for a purpose, right? That idea of purpose is our experiences. It's what we do with what we're given. And the power comes in knowing that you do have the power to use that. So that's just something that I've felt deeply within me from the experiences that I've had through the wealth redistribution, through my whole life of being one that gives my heart, my energy, my time, my skills, my currency. And seeing that being able to receive allows it to keep flowing through me. But it is a behavior, it is a habit, it is something you must do in the flesh, in the real world, just as much as you give.
Just to add to that, the giving and receiving, that really helps develop that abundance mindset, is to be able to give and receive. And of course, there's going to be a lot of shame sometimes that might come with asking for help. And it's also asking yourself, well, what would happen? What will my life look like if I don't ever ask for help? In the next 2 years, where would I be if I don't ask for help? And so it's like, if I do start asking for help, how different will my life look like? And there's a lot of generosity to be given in this world, and people, and the kindness of people, and it's like there's certain things that you can give to others, and there's certain things that other people can give to you, because you are unique and you are creative in your own way. And so there's something that you can offer to the world too. And so the whole giving and receiving, I mean, that literally helps you develop this abundance mindset. And one of the things that helped me through that is, again, and I'm, once we send out the email, you're going to have access to a lot of resources, but the 21-day abundance challenge really helped me develop that kind of mindset. And there is a meditation specifically around giving and receiving. So definitely I, would share that to look into that and see how that resonates with you.
I want to add that there was another question that came up from Crystal. And perhaps, Crystal, if you're willing to, maybe you'd like to ask it yourself directly.
Yeah, I mean, it's very emotional for me. So to try to, kind of keep my mind clear around it, it's typed out. But you know, as far as our trauma language, everybody has a different approach. I'm also a trauma professional, but the money one seems to be different, seems to require a different approach. I know that, you know, my studies in trauma have said we shouldn't be too mind-based. We can cause more harm by retelling the story too much. But it seems that around legacy burdens, which is more of an IFS term when we're like working with kind of internal family systems, like a parts approach where we're moving beyond a mono mind. Maybe you're familiar with this approach to trauma. Have you applied that to money? How would you use it specifically with money? I know I personally, when my money trauma rose up, I've been independent from a young age. I was career oriented. I had my daughter when I was 23, single income, nobody helping, no family, no partner, connected to community. And the moment I had a lull in money, all the internalized messages about being a young mom or a single mom, despite the fact that I'd been to college for years, you know, had a career, they just rose up to eat me, you know, even my family attacking me about being a single mom. And, you know, just the jealousy, people project stuff. You know, how do we combat those as people who have, you know, fought those labels? You know, what approach would you say? And it's more, you know, I think maybe I said it better in the text. I'm feeling kind of emotional because I'm dealing with that low pulling me down right now, all those messages that I know aren't true. And also I work in the medical field, you know, so there's that burnout where, you know, the trauma caused me to overwork and then my body broke down. And while I am holistic as well, COVID was hard on us. So I want to help other health practitioners. So what would you suggest? Like what approach for money specifically for, you know, medical professionals recovering from burnout with this when they hit the lull, for a financial approach specifically, and anything specific to parts work with money?
Thank you for sharing just like where you're at currently and also just where you've been as well. I'm gonna be real. I think there's some parts of the question that I don't fully think I understand, but I do have some thoughts around some of your questions or questions within questions that I would love to just speak to. Yes, I do think that talking too much about trauma can be overused and overplayed, depending on who's in the space and where the space is and what's being cultivated. It really just depends. Like that's why I really liked and chose to be here, because we're not just, you know, talking about trauma, we're talking about life after trauma too, which I think is most helpful. And when it comes to connecting, I mean, yes, I still do think it's helpful to find community, to be in community, to lean on community and practice that co-resiliency, co-regulation. And, you know, I feel anger on your behalf that you don't have that right now with your family and immediate loved ones. So I want to empathize with that and just share some compassion there. And when it comes to the internalized messages, I mean, I have all I used to have, and sometimes it comes up, all the meanest, vile, terrible things that I would tell myself. They weren't really me talking, they were other people that lived inside of me, right? Speaking to me, at me. And I think once you can separate, and this is like our brains are smart, you know, like we can logic with our emotions, but It's not really rational all the time. Separating the message from us as individuals and just getting curious of where is this coming from? Why do I believe this? Like, I don't believe it, but why does my body believe it? And yeah, just getting more curious. I think that's where it starts. And then also just letting you have that, being like, okay, this is a thought that I have. It sucks. I really don't like it, but it's here. And practicing that radical self-acceptance until that thought can transform into something else that lifts you up instead of brings you down. Yeah. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add.
Yeah, I definitely resonated with a lot that you said, Stella, and Crystal. Thank you so much for sharing your story and just being really vulnerable with us. I really appreciated the part around the IFS that you mentioned. There's definitely different parts of us. And again, Stella, the curiosity, how do we get to be curious with those parts of us, right? And again, you know, people will always have something to say. People will always project their stuff onto us. And it's really up to us how we're going to react to that. That's their stuff. I'm going to give it to so-and-so because I don't need this in my life right now. There's other things that are important that I need to prioritize than having to listen to these messages that do not serve me at all. And so with these different parts is being curious about this 20-year-old self of you that showed up and what she was going through at the time, right? And be curious and sit with that and also come to a place of acceptance. This is what happened. And now I'm here today. And I am in a place of acceptance or a place where I can forgive, you know, that part of myself and just continue to explore what is coming up for you when you get to sit with all of these different parts of you and how you get to show up to the world moving forward and being mindful of these messages that I'm receiving that make my body feel hurt or feel sad. They don't serve me, right? And so there's a lot of things that have been said in this space that I'm sure you probably resonate with. And if there's certain things that in this space that you don't resonate with, that's okay, because your journey is different than all of us. We heal very differently. And so your healing journey is going to be different than my healing journey. So whatever feels important to you, whatever you notice your body felt in that moment, then take that and just continue to take care of you.
I agree.
Mic
100%.
drop.
Rosa. Yes.
I think this is a nice way to wrap up. We only have a few minutes left. I want to let our three speakers have the final words, but I just want to quickly say that I'm so grateful for the three of you for modeling vulnerability, for modeling wisdom, and being in a way wonderful examples of this idea of post-traumatic growth. The three of you have these amazing businesses and companies all built from struggles that all of you have had in the past. And I encourage everyone to check out the work of Stella, of Rosa, and Nafasi. We'll be sending out a follow-up email with this recording. Please share it out to your friends and to your loved ones. And this follow-up email will also contain a number of resources, books, articles, videos that our three speakers have helped compile. So I want to thank you again.
Thank you all so much for sharing space, sharing your wisdom. Thank you all for listening. Know that, you know, you are your ancestors' wildest dreams. I know we hear it, but you are it. You are alive and breathing, and that means that you have it right now to build whatever form of abundance, whatever form of life that you want, with as many others in your life that you have yet to meet. So that is my last parting gift of wellness and love to you all.
Love that. What is going to be my last parting, I guess? that your financial potential is possible in every way, and that you actually don't need to compromise your spirit in the process. And I think that the three of us are living proof of that. If anything, that's what I want you to take away. We are all standing here in where we are now and have come from real intense places in life, including a lineage of ancestors that, like Nafasi said, we are their wildest dreams. Yeah.
Yeah, my last words is this is your community. You are not alone. We are here with you. And honestly, once you start focusing on your money, career, everything, you get to, opportunities come to you a lot more easily once you're ready to receive. And once you're ready to see that money is truly your friend, and money is energy, and money is with you. And so I challenge you to welcome money into your life and to feel affirmed that money has your back and it's there, and it's just for you to receive it. You already have what it takes to build abundance. It's already within you. So it's like, I'm here to accept it now. I'm open to receiving it. I'm open to receiving messages from my ancestors. And so with that, I'm so grateful to share space with all of you.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Andy.
Yes, thank you, Andy, so much for this beautiful space.
See y'all soon. Come next Wednesday. Bye, everybody.
Bye.